Cloud Archaeologist is pleased to present an introduction to CUR data with BOYD. Today we will spend a few minutes walking through a sample dataset from the AWS Well-Architected Labs public GitHub repository. This dataset contains 3 months of data from 2018. Since we are not dealing with a very large dataset, we can go ahead and perform an initial collection for each month available. If you have more than the current month's data available, we recommend collecting the current month and the previous month. Your first exposure to the data should be focused on exploring and trying to understand your baseline activity. The best place to start is at a high level and then start to drill down. AWS account IDs are a common means of segmenting resources, and in a multi-account AWS environment, is typically the first layer you'll want to assess. And combined with the product code column, you get some initial perspective into which accounts are using and ultimately costing you what. Using filters, we can get a quick summary of costs. We can see one account is incurring the majority of the cost, and looking at the product code column, we see the majority of costs are EC2 related. We can also use the Column Details tab to get a summary of values present in the dataset. Simply select a column and gain some insights. While we are here, let's see how the tags and coverage looks. %, tag coverage. Not great, but not uncommon either. The main question to consider is, will these values help us group or organize these costs? If not, we might need to investigate what tags are being used in your organization and verify they are included in the billing and cost management dashboard cost allocation tags. We now have a little more context thanks to the environment and department values. The cost center tag values will be useful later when we use classifications to fill our tag gaps. But for now, the more descriptive department value is more intuitive. Let's quickly review what our initial layer of excavation has revealed. We have 2 tags that will help us as we think about ways to classify the data, department and environment, and a third, cost center, that may be useful for classifying later. The majority of the costs are EC2, followed by QuickSight, some security and compliance-related products like Config and GuardDuty, and S3. The analysis page gives us a few options to start to understand what's happening in these accounts. Daily trends are useful, but they can also be a little misleading. When you see a big spike in cost data on the first of the month, chances are there will either be AWS support charges, reserve instances, or savings plans involved. In this case, it looks like we are seeing mainly EC2 costs, so this is not support related. Since this data is from 2018, a guess that there are reserve instances involved is a good one. The spike on the first day skews our chart a bit. So let's get interactive with a few Plotly charts. We mainly want to understand what the typical daily trend looks like in the most recent data, and BOYD has a few ways to do that. Are we in full panic mode? Or are things stable at the moment? Clicking the EC2 product code in the chart legend will disable it and give us a sense of what else might be happening. Aside from a spike in QuickSight and config charges on one day of the month, the rate of spend looks consistent. Great. So we do not seem to be in a panic mode situation. Things look fairly stable in terms of our daily trend. The tree map and sunburst chart options can help visualize distributions of spend and usage. Only using the account and product code columns, we can clearly see the cost distribution. And if we include the department and environment tag columns that were useful, we can go much deeper. Now we can see both accounts contain production resources. One account is shared by central IT and sales, while the other is used by analytics. If we also add the usage type column, we can dig a bit deeper. If we focus on the analytics account, we can see spot instances and a micro instance type are being used. We won't go too deeply into how reserved instances manifest in the data in this tutorial. But as you learn more, you will understand that heavy usage indicates a reserved instance, monthly recurring fee, and box usage indicates the discounted usage as the recurring fee is consumed. So we have confirmed our suspicion that reserved instances are in use, which is a sign someone is paying attention to cost efficiency. Sunburst charts are also useful for exploring distributions, allowing us to analyze specific slices of the data dynamically. These will become increasingly valuable to us as our data classification improves. At this point, we've performed a basic assessment of the current status. Reserved and spot instances are in use, so we know efficiency is being considered. We have a few departments with production resources and see a steady pattern of usage without too many causes for concern. Focusing on the current month's data tells us where we are, but it doesn't tell us how we got here. That is why understanding the previous month's context matters. BOYD's monthly report provides streamlined analysis capabilities to minimize data processing and provide maximum flexibility. If your manager dropped this dataset in your lap and asked what is going on, we now would start to understand why. The monthly trend shows costs were previously much more excessive than what we are currently seeing. December costs decreased 88% from November, and we went from almost $117 per day down to just over $13. With our group by columns still selected, we can immediately start to assess what usage types may have contributed to the increased costs in the previous months using the trend chart. We can also see the daily trends based on the group by columns, which can provide quick context around things like our spot usage pricing variation during the month. These can be incredibly useful in understanding the patterns and daily trends of consumption in your accounts. We have a good idea what is going on in December, but our manager isn't going to like a "this is fine" answer. We are okay at the moment, but based on previous activity, do we have any confidence it will stay that way? What if whatever was going on in October and November is actually normal operating activity and the analytics department took December off? Taking just a quick look at the November monthly report, we immediately see Glue and RDS services as the primary contributors. Glue is a data integration service and RDS is a managed database service. Knowing we had quick site costs in December, we are starting to see some possibilities. Did some data processing occur in previous months that produced data now being used by QuickSight users? Is this going to be a recurring theme? And if so, how frequently? We cannot assume this is the case, but we have more evidence that might support it, and we have enough details and understanding to move on to phase 2 and start having conversations with the departments involved. In less than 10 minutes, we've been able to download and perform an initial analysis of a CUR dataset. We don't know everything yet, but our initial excavation has paved the way for us to expand on our understanding. We hope you have found this exposure to the dataset informative. If you're interested in using BOYD to learn more about your dataset, visit cloudarchaeologist.com.